Hi, we're going to make another Paul Cezanne still life. Now you may want to practice drawing a pear before you actually do it. But it's going to be the same concept as yesterday. We're going to start out with the lightest color and move to the darkest color. But I want you to notice that I don't want my pear just sitting in space. So I drew a line so it looks like it's sitting on a table. Again, I draw a little smiley face and then the stem. I'm going to paint my pear yellow first to do the lightest color first. And notice how my paint is not really super thin. I'm not using too much water in these watercolors. I don't want my paper to get all wrinkly, and I want my paint to be nice and kind of thick so that it stays on. So I'm painting very thoughtfully like an artist. And then the next color I'm going to use is green. And I'm going to blend it with that yellow to get that nice pear color. And if you notice again at the top, I'm going to leave it a little bit more yellowy so it looks like it's just been picked off the tree. And for that brown color, for my shadow, I'm going to use red because red and green are opposites on the color wheel. And that will give me a nice brown color. So I use the red and I'm going to blend it in, and all of a sudden it's going to look like a real pear, one that's been picked off the tree. But I have to have enough paint and not too much water to make this really happen. If it's too watery, this won't happen. So I'm not using too much water, I'm using more paint than water, using a thick coat of paint. And I just keep blending away. And I'm using just a little touch of brown around the edges just to make it look like a little bit more like a pear. A little bit more brown around the edges there. Just to give it a little bit more darkness and not too much redness. Then I'm going to wash off my brush. And I'm going to make a shadow. And I'm going to use just a touch of black because black is such a strong color. And look at how little black I choose to use. And then I'm going to spread it out to make a shadow on my table because the light is coming from the top. That's why the top of my pear is yellow and it's light, and the bottom of my pear is dark because that's where the shadow is. Then I'm going to draw a window because that's where my light is coming in from. And if you want to draw a picture on the wall on the other side, you can do that too. And then I'm going to paint the outside sky in my window. And if you want to paint clouds or a tree, you can do that too. I'm just going to paint my window in. And you can see how thoughtfully and carefully I'm painting my window in. Kind of looks like I don't have quite enough paint, but I make it enough. I spread it around. I'm going to use a little bit more. And then I'm going to paint my table brown. I'm going to be careful not to paint over that black paint because I don't want the colors to smush together. And I'm using both sides of my brush just like an artist would. And then I'm going to choose a color for my wall. And then I'm going to set this aside to dry completely before I upload it to Artsonia because I don't want any shiny parts showing up on Artsonia. I'm going to let it dry completely. Also, so I don't want to let it drip. want you to watch how thoughtfully and carefully, as an artist, I'm choosing to work. I'm not rushing. I'm washing my brush off. Watch this. I'm going to do something called wet on wet. I'm wetting my paper first with just clear water. This is a cool artist technique. I'm wetting my paper first with clear water, and then I put the red paint on, and it helps it go on very thin, and it helps it spread out. And that's a technique that artists use. It's called wet on wet. So I'm using wet paint on wet paper. But you have to make sure that you have nice, clean water to do that. And it gives it a nice washed out look that's different than just painting on it. So you can see wherever I put the paint on the wet paper, it's very soft look. And it's different than when I just paint on regular dry paper. So I'd like to see if you can give that a try too. Remember, it's called wet on wet. You wet the paper first. And there you go. There's your pear.